Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural commentator. And today we're going to be looking at an odd and very strange story that appeared in a local newspaper here. And it's entitled, "A Woman is Denied a Mediumship License and She Sues Lily Dale." Now, to understand the context of this, you have to understand what Lily Dale is. Lily Dale is a community in the western tier of New York. It's sort of on the border, near the border of Pennsylvania, and it's in upper state New York. And it's a spiritistic community. Now, what is a spiritistic community? A spiritualist community is a community that believes that people can talk to the departed souls of loved ones and friends. They can hold seances. They can ask questions to a spirit medium, and that spirit medium can actually talk to a dead person and get information from that dead person and convey messages across from the living to the dead and from the dead to the living. So they believe in the occultic power of spirit mediumship. And this is nothing new. This has gone back as far as recorded history, especially, for example, in Egypt. They had a lot of occultic powers, and they claimed that they could speak for the dead. The dead people could speak, and the living could consult. And they had occult practitioners back then. And this is quite common in the ancient world. And it has been common throughout all of the pagan tribes and nations of the world. And only in, say, the last 100 years or so, with the rapid rise of modern science and all that has contributed to our society, this practice of spirit mediumship has been on the decline. Now, it had a resurgence in the 1800s because in New York State, there were sisters called the Fox Sisters, and they claimed that they could communicate with the departed souls, and they would gather people around in their parlor, in their home, in their living room, turn the lights way down low, and would then reportedly communicate messages from the dead to the living. And this became quite popular in the 1800s. In fact, it actually was popular in England, Victorian England. It was popular in the United States for a while during the 1800s. And then going into the 1900s, or last century, 20th century, the practice began to decline. But this does not mean that it's gone away totally. And so Lily Dale community is sort of a remnant of that earlier age when the spirit occultism was very popular among people. And so Lily Dale is a community, small, more like a village, where they have homes, Victorian-styled homes. There's a small lake right bordering on the town of Lily Dale. And this is where a lot of the spirit mediums will gather, especially during the summertime. They have cottages there, and they have visitors and tourists come to get a, quote, reading. They sit down with a spirit medium. They may have a seance around a table. They may use the Ouija board. They may use all kinds of different methods and means in order to supposedly talk with the spirits of the dead people. Now, Lily Dale is a community, and as far as I can understand, I don't know much about the community other than I've been there once and drove around the circle. It's basically the front gate, and you can drive your car in and just basically drive around the whole village and then come out the gate, and there you are. So I drove through there. They have homes with shingles up on the front of the home saying medium. And so I guess there are practicing occult spirit mediums who reside in these homes, especially, again, during the summer times, and they will read your question. You go there and you ask, hey, what does cousin Ann want? She died 5 years ago, but she never did get to communicate what she wanted to do with this piece of property. Or there are all kinds of questions that people might want to ask people that have died and gone on to the next life. And so these mediums will, for a small fee, sometimes it's not so small of a fee, but they will actually, for profit, tell you what dead people are saying or trying to say to you. And that's what they claim. Now, the big question is there anything to this? And from a Christian perspective, from a biblical Christian perspective, we have to say that while we don't know about every instance of this spirit mediumship, we don't know every instance of the seance, but there are instances where, yes, this actually is taking place. There are spirits talking to people, but they aren't the spirit of the person. They are demonic spirits. They're evil spirits. They are impersonating the deceased person, and because they know all kinds of information, these demonic spirits can actually fool and deceive people into thinking they're talking to their long-lost cousin or their passed-on grandparents or a departed loved one or friend. And these demonic entities are actually playing these people for fools, and the mediums are right there in the middle, as the name medium means. Medium means between one side and the other, and so they're claiming that they can pass on information from one side to the other, from the dead to the living to the dead. They claim that they are stepping in between the living and the dead and facilitating communication. Now, do they do that most of the time? Probably not. Do they do that some of the time? They don't do it directly with the lost person, departed person, but they're trafficking in occult demonic spirits. So they do have a spirit that they're talking to and is communicating to them, but they aren't talking and communicating to the spirit they think they're talking about. So you might be thinking that you want to talk to your departed grandfather and ask him where he kept his secret papers that you never were able to see, and you go to a medium at Lilydale, and they'll sit down with you, and you pay them whatever the fee is, $100 or so for the session or more, and they'll try to put you in touch with your grandfather who's gone on and departed. And they will get some readings, but they won't be from the grandfather, because they will be from the demonic entities, the spirits who are fooling the people. And they can be very, very deceiving and imitate voice patterns and know information about only grandfather would know, and so on and so forth. So from a Christian perspective, and you can read up on this, this is not new. This has been talked about and written about and spoken about for ever since Christianity, and even before Christianity in the Jewish faith. These kinds of activities, these occult practices, have been known. And if you read in the Old Testament, you will find that they are always forbidden. And of course, the biggest story depicting this is when the apostate King Saul wanted to find out his information about the battle that he was facing with the Philistines, and he couldn't get any headway with God. He couldn't hear the voice of God through prayer, and then the prophets weren't able to pick up any kind of message from God because God was being silent because of Saul's disobedience to him. And so Saul went off to a witch or spirit medium or someone who traffics in the spirits, and he met with her, and he wanted her to conjure up he wanted the prophet Samuel. And the spirit medium was thinking, okay, I'll just contact my spirit guide, my spirit connection from the other side, and we'll have a conversation with this Samuel. And so, but when she actually encountered a spirit, she was shocked because it wasn't her familiar spirit guide, her demonic entity that was deceiving her and deceived the people that came to her. She actually did run into the real person of Samuel, and he gave a strong rebuke to Saul and gave a terrifying message to say, basically, Saul, you're going to be here in the land of the dead because the Philistines are going to win and you're going to be defeated. So it was a complete disaster for Saul, but it does show that the demonic spirits who normally traffic at times can actually be set aside, and the person who is the real person can actually speak. But that's not at all what normally happens in these seances. What normally happens in the seances is that the demonic spirit actually is the one that is being dealt with. So let's find out what the controversy here at Lilydale is. And this is not a place that any Christian wants to go. This is a place usually for people who are not very strong Christians or not Christian at all will go in order to avoid going directly to God in prayer and finding out what God's will is in the Bible and using legitimate means. They want to bypass all that and want to talk to the dead. So let's find out what people are going through at Lilydale. This big controversy because some spirit medium was denied a license. So let's find out what the controversy is. It says several prospective mediums have filed a lawsuit seeking admittance to serve as mediums in the Lilydale assembly. So somebody was denied a license to practice mediumship at this Lilydale village. And this is hilarious because a lot of these mediums, no doubt, are hucksters and grifters and just are good at playing on emotions and reading the emotions and reading the language of people and are good at ferreting out information without being obvious. And they're really con men and women, a lot of them. But there are actually times when the demonic entities actually do give them supernatural information. And so there's a whole mixed bag of people over there. And they have a standard of telling the true medium from the false medium. They have to meet a certain qualification. Let's find out what these the hierarchy. There must be a hierarchy of mediums that don't let lesser mediums in. There must be better mediums and worse mediums, supposedly. But let's read on. It says Barbara Robinson, Linda Struble, and Natalia Scorbercia, all dues-paying members of Lilydale Assembly, filed their suit recently in the Supreme Court in Mayville, claiming that they've been barred from practicing inside Lilydale's gates over a disagreement over the score necessary to be qualified as one of Assembly's mediums. So they have a score ranking system. So you have to pass a test, I guess, to be qualified as a medium. So what in the world is that test? Those who want to be mediums have to complete an application process to Lilydale and then become registered by Lilydale. Robinson, Struble, and Sobericia are spiritualists who say they completed the application process but have been not allowed to practice at Lilydale because of a disagreement over the combined evaluations. So it should be very interesting to find out how in the world this village of occult practitioners, how in the world do they grade what is a good medium or a bad medium? Is it based on their demeanor with people? Some are rude and blunt and crude and in dealing with customers, and then others have more manners and are more polite and kind and draw more business, and while the others maybe drive it away? Or are there some that are really good at grifting and then others are really bad at grifting? Or are there some standards where they actually do contact these demonic spirits, spirit guides, who can feed them information about people who have passed on to their clients and convince them that they're really talking to their long-lost loved ones and friends, and others who can't do that very well with the demonic spirit guides? I don't know. Let's read on. It says that as a result of Lily Dale's breach, Robinson, Struble, and Scorbarcia suffered monetary damages in an amount to be proven at trial, but not limited to foreseeable, natural, or probably damages in the form of lost fees that would have been earned by Robinson, Struble, and Scorbarcia had they been granted status. Attorney Joshua Colangio, Brian Dorsey, and Whitney LLP in New York City wrote in the complaint. So they've actually hired lawyers to sue the village of Lilydale, claiming that they're being denied a right to make a living through mediumship because they don't meet a certain standard. And you have to imagine that this standard is pretty subjective. We'll find out here later, but it seems like you're dealing with an area that doesn't have fast and hard rules. For example, who can tell whether someone is really contacting the dead or not? Because we all have seen on television, for example, I think there's a guy named Von Prague, and there's another medium, Jonathan Edwards, I think his name is, and not the historic Christian theologian Jonathan Edwards, but there's a younger Jonathan Edwards who claims that he can talk to the dead, and people like Sylvia Brown who claim that they have powers to talk to the dead, and different practitioners that we've all heard about and have been famous. And they're convincing. Are they actually doing what they're claiming that they can do? Probably not. But who knows? In some cases, some of them may be dealing so familiar with these spirit entities that they can get information that will amaze their clients. And that's usually what brings more clients, is that if they can tell them information that only the family would know, and that's supposed to be convincing evidence that they're really talking to the departed soul. But again, the demonic entities can know things about every family. They have a vast array of knowledge about things, and they can consult that and use that to convince people that they're really trafficking in departed souls, when in fact they're just talking to demons. And again, this, in another field very related to this, is the UFO phenomenon. And a lot of the activity in the UFO phenomenon is a parallel to the occult mediumship activity. Because again, it's a very fuzzy, not at all clear what people are seeing in the UFOs. There's a lot of subjectivity. There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. It's all kinds of confusion. The same exact atmosphere as in the occult phenomenon here at Lilydale. So let's read on here. It says the plaintiffs say they were told by Lilydale they needed an 82 success rate on combined evaluations, defined as the number of times a candidate can conclusively show they engage the spirit world during the readings of the individuals. Well, how in the world do you show conclusively that you've engaged the spirit world? What kind of proof do they submit for successfully engaging the spirit world? Is it the opinion of the client that comes and pays them? Is there a survey that the clients take that they have to answer questions about? Do you feel that you engaged with your lost loved one? Do you feel that the medium was in contact with your lost loved one? Are you satisfied that they were able to communicate the lost loved one to you and you to the lost loved one? What is it, a survey? I don't know. It doesn't say. But it's pretty questionable that they can actually quantify it like this. Passing rate of 85? It says Lily Dale, and the passing rate is actually 85%, and denied Robinson, Struble, and Scorbercia licenses to work at Lilydale. So these people must not have got 85. In addition to losing out on business inside Lilydale's gates, they say they're losing out on business outside the center because ties to Lilydale lead to additional client demand throughout the region. According to the lawsuit filing, registered mediums can earn between $180 to $500 an hour from their services. So I was actually on the lower end. I was saying they charge like $100, but here it's saying you can make $180 to $500 an hour, claiming that you're talking to the dead on behalf of the living. Wow. If you've ever seen the movie Ghost, starring Whoopi Goldberg, the actress, she has a business similar to what Lilydale is having here. And if you ever see that movie, she and her sisters were part of this scam. It's actually, they knew that they were ripping off the customers and pretending that they were talking to the dead when they really didn't. And what happened in the movie was, and it's really, this is actually something I believe does happen quite a bit, is during one of the grifts, one of the fake seances, a actual spirit entity did contact them. So that's a very interesting thing. This is one of the rare examples when Hollywood actually got something right. And I think this is happening with Lilydale too. That I would say, my guess is that it's mostly grift. It's not 100% grift, but it's mostly, say, 80%, 90% fake quackery, showmanship, and these women that didn't make it, they're not good showmans. That's pretty much. But occasionally, there is a real spiritual reality coming through, but it's not the kind the people are thinking it is. These three people say they were given a membership guide in May 2022, which showed prospective mediums can have to complete 25 outdoor services and 2 Monday night circles. I don't know what those are. And pay a non-refundable $150 fee to Lilydale to be considered for status as a registered medium. So they had to sign up. They had to apply. Meetings with Lilydale Board and the Lilydale Mediums League are also required. Okay. So these are the groups that I believe are the subjective standard. Membership guide further states additional evaluations occur for which an 82% on the combined evaluations is needed to pass, while the plaintiffs point to several other Lilydale documents that also refer to an 80% passing score on the combined evaluations. And I think those evaluations, again, I'm guessing, but it's probably based on surveys from clients. So again, I think it's more about the showmanship. After performing mediumship services throughout 2022 without compensation, Robinson and these three women were told in April of 2023 that their applications for mediumship had been denied because they didn't score over 85 on the combined evaluation. Robinson scored 82.6. They actually have that 0.6 there. So it's got to be based on surveys. It's got to be based on whether the clients thought they were in touch with the dead. Scorbercia scored 83.1 and Strobel scored 84.2. All three were told to take the combined evaluations again this fall, and of course, probably submit another fee. Now the women allege they have been faced retaliation from Lilly board members, with Scorbercia told in May that if she consulted with an attorney, she would never become a registered medium at Lilydale. While a former board president allegedly told Scorbercia that the current Lilydale board intended to revoke the memberships of Scorbercia and Robinson as a precursor to taking their homes at Lilydale because they had been raising complaints. So taking their homes. So they evidently had been either bought a home, and I'm sure they're pretty expensive in this exclusive village, or they were renting, and they're going to lose their home. So it says, upon information and belief, correspondence from counsel for Robinson, Struble, and Scorbercia that had been sent to the board members only was shared at a social gathering to the evident amusement of those present. That's the lawyer said. So they have been in big trouble because they are being denied and may even be losing their homes. This is kind of humorous in the sense that here you have showmen who are judging other showmen and saying, you're not the kind of performer we want here at Lilydale, and we don't think you're good for the, quote, brand. But in all seriousness, this is pretty sick and twisted, and they're playing on the emotions of vulnerable people who come and visit. They're exploiting them, especially after the death of a loved one, after the funeral, and they're holding out false hope. The point is that as a Christian, we have no warrant from the Bible. There's no legitimate way that a Christian should be inquiring of the dead for anything on this earth. We are never taught to do that. In fact, mediums and occult practitioners are all condemned in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So this is totally illegitimate, this whole practice. And whether it's a grift, just a human level scam, con game, or whether they actually are dealing with demons impersonating lost loved ones, in either case, it is bad news. It is a bad scene, and no Christian, no person, whether Christian or not, should ever go and consult with these Lilydale mediums. And all of this foolishness about some mediums don't pass the test and others do, it's all just a scam or it's a demonic deception. Either way, it's bad news. Stay away from it. We'll see you back next week. God bless. Take care.